Welcome, this is Maya Dynamics Level 1, Week 4. I think we're ready to start. There's a couple of questions going on the chat window, which I'm going to take care of during the class, okay, for you, Shabana. But again, as usual, keep typing them on the chat window, and I'll keep coming back to it during the class. So today we're going to continue with the elements, creating elements for the main assignment, okay? I'm going to open a playblast of the actual file, the actual layout, just to talk about it for a second. So here we go. I believe it's this one. Okay, so this is the scene file that you guys must have. Okay, the ones taking this course live, for you, Rafe, and you, Shabana, and all the others that for some reason are not here today. But this is what we're gonna be working on, and you may have seen this already. I need you to start working on this right away. Okay. For those of you following the recordings and have donated to the content supporter, then you should have access to the FTP server. You can download this scene and then start working on it. And those of you who don't have access to that, then you can create your own geometry and recreate a scene that has similar, if you want to really practice with us. What we're going to do today, okay, and let me open also the PDF that I gave you, which is right here. Let's work a little bit on setup to do bubbles. All right, because remember, if you follow the script, okay, we have stuff falling under the water, which is the first part, okay, when the camera begins, is underwater. Okay, this light gray line in here represents where the water surface will be. And eventually the camera is underwater. We're being shot at from this tower over here, okay, so there are going to be bullets coming in. And they're going to be bullets hitting the sand, hitting the wood, hitting the metal crosses, and some of them will hit the water and come in, and they will leave trails in this fashion. Okay, so that's what I want to see. Okay, so this kind of trails of bubbles being left by the bullets, as well as probably if you guys want, you can drop something on the water, kind of a rifle or a helmet or even a person if you have animation for it, and that person or whatever that object can emit bubbles as well. Okay, so once the camera goes above water, then we'll deal with that in the following weeks with other elements and things. So that's just I'm gonna keep it open just in case we need to get back to it. So bubbles, like any thing effect that we're gonna be doing together, I want you to think, repeat it one more time. I want you to think in terms of creating an adaptable, flexible rig. Okay, so always try to make something that you can reuse later. It would be quite frustrated to having to do bubbles throughout your career 10, 20 times and having to start from the beginning, right? So you will probably want to have something already created that you can control easily. Same thing with the rain. And everything I'm going to teach you today, please just take what's worth of it and apply it to the rain setup. Okay, that's the fact that we move past that one doesn't mean that it's done. Doesn't mean that it's over. I still need to see rain. I've seen a little bit of rain, but nothing through the shot camera from the layout. So it's a long way to go on that one. But take whatever you can from this one and apply it in there. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and set up a little scene here to make a bit of a bubble setup. Okay. So I'm just gonna make myself first, and it is the easiest way to deal with these things, is to make myself emit my element out of geometry. Once I get it working correctly and I'm happy with it, then I can disconnect it from that and plug it into a different emitter if I need to. But for now, I think I'm going to stick to, let's use something different than what I used in the Spanish class, just in case. Let's try a helix. Perfect. And I'm going to probably rotate this thing to orient. This is going to become my bubble emitter. So perfect. By all means, okay, you can use any geometry you like. It's nothing necessary to use this kind of geometry at all. I'm just gonna adjust it a little, see if I can get. I think this will give us something interesting. Perfect. So I get my geometry, and I'm going to simply just make it a particle emitter. Just start from there. Me from object. Let's name these things correctly from now on, remember? So this will be my bubble emitter. It's going to be a surface emitter, as you know, and I'm going to leave the rest by default. My rate is too low, so let's go ahead and increase that and hit create. And we get just the usual. just regular particles. So when you're doing effects, okay, in general, regardless of what you're working on, it's a good idea to try, especially if it's a natural phenomenon, let's say, okay, something relatable in nature. It's a good idea to always go and try to find some sort of reference, okay, in the real world of what you're trying to do, as opposed to trying to mimic an effect from a different film, okay? That's sometimes it happens. So let's say that in this case, okay, this exact example, you're doing bubbles, and you remember you saw and you're doing a natural look, okay? You're not doing something stylized. You're doing something that is supposed to be invisible, practically, okay? So something that is so real that no one will notice it. And then you remember you saw some cool bubbles in another film that you know that were made by the computer. I wouldn't tell you to go there first for reference. I will tell you to go to nature first and try to observe what's happening. And then at least just to give you a rough idea. We all have seen bubbles many times, but you will be surprised how often you look at the real footage and you realize things that probably you wouldn't pay attention to. So the BBC Motion Gallery is one pretty cool website that we tend to use quite a bit for these kind of references. Okay, so you can just put here, let's see, you can put underwater, for example, underwater bubbles. Let's see what we get. And it gives you a few clips of it. You can use YouTube, anything, but I find the BBC Motion Gallery has some pretty, it's more nature-based things, than others. And then you find what you like. Okay, so say this clip is good. This could be something interesting, because I want you to use this setup. Okay, not only for the bubble trails, but eventually you will do, let's call them ambient bubbles. Okay, so you're going to be placing this emitter somewhere to do this kind of effect, okay, that is playing on my screen. Just generic bubbles happening because you're underwater, okay? So we want to adapt it. So this is something interesting, okay? So watch this, okay? We're not going to watch it together for too much, but get an idea, okay, what's happening, the properties of this. Okay, if you pause in a frame, okay, take a look and see how they climb, how the radius, okay? If you look at this with the Analytic Effects DDI, okay? So I see this and I only see spheres, first of all. I see them that they blend together. I see that they're very round, okay? They have different sizes, of course. They tend to go from the bottom, obviously, to the top. They have a bit of a jitter motion, okay? It's not very straight. Okay, they're a bit jumpy, let's say, okay? Then get a sense of the speed, okay? Just do that on your own, okay? So you can see how they look when they're close up, far away. Perfect. Keep that in mind. So let's go ahead and try to do something that looks kind of like that. First thing will be, and also we're going to make it as a rig, okay, as a setup. So right away from the very beginning, let's go ahead and make our locator. Okay, let's name this guy Bubble, and try to keep consistency with all your setups, and that way you'll feel much easier, much more comfortable, mutating from one rig to the other, or transferring attributes. It's going to be much easier. So you can name this Bubble Master Control, kind of what we named, similar to what we named our rain setup. We also need to clean our, our channel box for the locator. We don't want to have all those attributes there. We're just basically repeating this bit from last week, or last class actually. I hope you had a good break, all of you, and got some rest. We have a long way to go still. So clean it up. Nothing on the channel box. We're perfect. And okay, so first thing, what do we need to do is push these particles up with some sort of force. Do we want to get rid of the velocity of the emitter? I will say, in this case, my personal opinion, yes, let's get rid of it so we can focus only for now on the fields that we're going to be placing. Okay, so I'm going to take the velocity of the speed attribute of my emitter and I'm going to get rid of that. Get that to 0. These particles are just going to be born and get stuck. Perfect. So we need to push these guys up. I'm going to show you today one way to do it, the more conventional way. And I'll probably, when we do a different class, 2-3 weeks, I'm going to show you a different kind of way of dealing with these things. But for now, okay, let's name our particles bubbles, like they should. And let's go ahead and create a gravity field. I'm going to make myself a gravity field. And you will say, well, why gravity? If gravity is pointing in the opposite direction, no biggie. I can invert it easy. Okay, so now it's raining. But if you just grab the magnitude okay, or the direction, and invert either one of those two, okay, you will get the motion that you need. So I could grab, for example, the magnitude and put it to negative 9.8, or I can grab my direction in y, which is -1, and set that to 1, and I get my field. It's not the only way. You could use another field, uniform field or something, but there we go. Step 1, we got that. I probably want to control how fast these particles are going to be rising. So I'm going to be right away, modify, add attribute, okay? We're going to put a control, two controls. I'm going to put, to try to keep consistency, remember with last week, we're going to do, the first control is going to be called rate, number of bubbles that we're going to be emitting, right? It's going to be a float, a minimum number of 0, I guess. It doesn't really matter. Maximum and a default value of 1000. Hit add. And my second control is going to be called, you could call it gravity, all right? I'm just, it doesn't matter honestly what you call it if it's just for you. If you're going to be passing this rig to someone else, then try to use a descriptive name. Gravity might be misleading because I could, if I need it, add a gravity field to push these particles down if necessary for some reason. So gravity can be a bit of a problem. This makes the particles climb, okay? So it's in terms of in effects, okay, you will call that buoyancy, okay, how buoyant these bubbles are going to be. So I'm going to actually name it that just to cover my back in case I need to pass this on to someone else, okay? So the buoyancy is maybe a better name. The minimum value, I'm going to leave it, if you want these bubbles to be pushed up only, again, to pass it on to another person and you don't want them to move them in the opposite direction, then put a minimum value. I won't. You never know. You might need to push these particles down and then, I don't know. So I'm going to leave the minimax open, but I'm going to give myself, in this case, at least a default value of 9.8. And hit OK. Let's do our connections, okay, quickly. We're going to keep that window open because we're going to do many of them. So probably I'll make it a little bit smaller, keep it somewhere there. Let's just see if we can place it here. And let's connect, first thing is the rate, so we're going to plug our emitter on the right side. Okay, this is very simple stuff for you now. So there you go. And let's find the rate, which I believe I saw somewhere here. There you go. Rate, and then buoyancy is going to be the gravity field magnitude, right? So buoyancy to the magnitude of the field. Done. Easy. All right, so we should get the same result probably because I don't think I changed. Oh, let me just double check. Bubble master control. My rate is set to 0. For some reason, it didn't take my default value. So let's just put that to 1000. And we should get our bubbles doing exactly what we had before. Beautiful. Next thing you will probably want to do, I wouldn't worry on the rendering until the very end, okay? So for now, let's just worry about the motion. And if you analyze the video one more time, you will remember that this thing has a bit of a jittery. Okay, so look at, they come in like clumps. Okay, in this particular video, I can pick other ways, but they seem to come in like groups of cylindrical shapes that kind of deform a little bit. So you can see they're climbing. Okay, so let's go ahead and add some motion to this. Okay, right now it's very uniform. But actually, you know what? Before we do that, let's go ahead and deal with the life of these particles. Okay, and that's probably going to answer your question, Giovanna, that you had about the controlling the lifespan and connecting it through the connection editor. You wouldn't do that probably. I'll show you how to do it correctly. So let's say, I'm going to give you one tip today in this part now that you must apply on the rain setup. Okay, it's basically the ability to kill particles on a specific distance. Okay, either based on the height or the position in X or Z. Basically, it's the ability to kill a particle if they pass a certain point on the screen. Okay, well that is a key element. So instead of me going back to the rain setup and doing it there, I'm going to do it here. But please apply that over there. Okay. So we're going to be able to kill these particles based on two different ways. Okay, either if they pass a specific point in distance. My thinking behind that is that let's say that I need to keep these particles visible the entire time, but once they go past camera, I can kill them, right? That is a valid thing. Or we can kill them based on a random life, for example. Okay, you can specify a minimum value, a maximum value, for example, and have these particles die. And I want to control all that through my locator. So the first one will be the easiest one, will be just killing particles based on their life, their age. So we need to put an expression, okay? We could do it here, okay? We could do it under, the lifespan mode by default, is live forever. If I want to give them a random life, there is an attribute here, okay? Or actually a lifespan mode called random range. In random range, we spoke it briefly before. Basically, it needs a default value, okay? A default lifespan, which is at the very bottom. In this case, a base of 1, and then if you go back to the top, then you get a lifespan random, which is a number that's going to get added and subtracted randomly to each particle in order to give you a different result. This is fine for that, but in this case, first of all, we need to be dealing with expressions because we're learning and we want to become better TDs. And second of all, because we're going to be adding an expression to kill the particles on position anyway, so we're going to need to have expressions no matter what. So for that, instead of using this random range, we're going to use lifespan PP only, which is the ability to, what allows you to put an expression in these particles and deal with their life. So let's go in, okay, if you go to the particle shape node, okay, you're going to open the per particle array attributes, which is right here where everything is. Lifespan PP has already been added, so it's not like color or opacity that you have to add it yourself. No, it's already there on the list. So if you right click on it, you get the option to put expressions on creation, runtime, before dynamics, and after dynamics. I believe we spoke about this, but I'm not 100% sure. But creation is the expression gets executed on a per particle basis this time because it's a per particle attribute, and it gets executed only when the particle is born and no more. The difference is that you have options to do it based on runtime, meaning that it gets evaluated every single frame. Okay. We will do both in some kind. At this point right now, I just want to assign them a life when they're born, and they will stick to that and live through it and die. Okay, so on creation is going to be perfect. If you do it by putting their mouse, right-clicking, over the attribute that you want to change, it automatically gets loaded, okay, under the selected attribute. You can either copy this and paste it, okay, to put your expression, or you could either find it on this list or just type it yourself. If you type it yourself, you don't need to type this part. Maya already knows that, and it will fill it in for you. You only have to put the rest. So in this case, lifespan, I want to give them a random value, okay, a random range between two numbers, and have each one of them pick whatever they want and stick to it throughout their life. So to that, you're going to be putting the equal sign, okay? So the lifespan PP of this particle is going to be equal to a random, which is RAND, which is the command that you're going to be using for random. And we're going to specify a minimum value, let's say in this case, 1, and a maximum of 2, for example. Okay? Close parentheses, terminate this, hit create. No errors, everything is fine. And then you can rewind and play, and then you will get what you expect. These particles will be dying at some point in my screen. Let me zoom out. I can zoom out for some reason. Okay, I think now it's fine. Let me see. One second, I think my keyboard is acting up. Okay, sorry, I just seem to have lost my keyboard for a second here. It's one of those Bluetooth. There we go. I think it's back. Yep, but it doesn't let me go to wireframe. I want to go to wireframe to show you better, but for some reason. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm going to pause the recording and take a look at the batteries of this thing and see if it's dying on me. Okay, just bear with me 1 minute, please. That was the salvation, the solution for this. All right, so I just rewind my scene by accident, but it seems like everything is fine now. So I was going to show you that these particles are dying. And let me see if I just switch the background of this. You know what? I'm going to close my scene quickly. Let's save this thing just in case. So let's go ahead and save this as we are on the wrong folder. And relaunch Maya quickly. So week 4, and let's name this. All right, let me just kill this. Bring it back up. I don't see any questions. I think so far everything is making sense. All right. So. All right, let's try one more time. Perfect, now it's fine. Okay, so let's go ahead and let this guys move around, and we're basically hard coding the life, but it's working. Okay, you can see that they're dying right there. I was trying to change the background to black so you can see it better. Okay, so there you go. So this is working, but I don't really want to hard code it. I don't want to have to go back into my expression every single time. And okay, I just wanted to double check if I was recording. I don't want to go back to my expression every time and having to change those numbers. I want to control them through the locator. Okay, so let's go in and add some attributes in here. So modify, add attribute. Okay, we're going to use, in this case, well, I want to name my attribute life min. Okay, for minimum value of life, a minimum of the, I don't know why you will say 0, but I'm going to leave it at 0. Maximum, I'm going to put it, and a default value, I think we're using in this case, it was 1, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so, and I'm going to add also a life max, which is going to have a minimum of, I don't know, leave it at 0 if I need to, maximum, no maximum, and a max value of 2 for default. And here we go. Okay, life min, life max. Then the question is, okay, if the Giovanna had, for example, I'm not sure if some of you did, Julius as well, how do you connect from here, okay, from the locator to the particle actually? And in this case, the best way to do it is going to be throughout the expression itself. Okay, so basically what I want to tell the expression is to use, instead of using a hard-coded number, which I'm using here, okay, if I right click and go back to my expression, instead of using a hard-coded value, okay, like 1, what I actually want to use is tell this expression to look for that locator and look for the attribute and see what number they're using and put that in here. So it's very simple. You can actually, if you don't know the name of the attribute, if you don't remember it, okay, you could grab the locator and then grab the attribute and then copy this, okay, and then go back to your particles. And I'll give you a little hint. If you want to load your expressions, you can see that I load my bubble control and I can see my attributes here, but if I load my bubbles, I'm not really seeing my expressions right away. The key for this is to hit the down key on your keyboard, okay, but only do it outside of the expression editor window. Okay, so if you do that, if you select your particles and hit down, you can see that your expression shows up again. And that is just nothing magical. It's just that you basically going to the shape node right away, as opposed to having to, for example, select my particles, go to the shape node, scroll down, right click, hit creation. It takes too long, right? You can just basically select your particles and hit the down key and you're back. So I have the attribute copied in memory, so what I want to do is instead of putting that there, I'm going to say that. Simple. That's all there is. So it's going to look for this number and use that as a minimum. I'm going to copy the, well, I don't have to copy it, I have it in memory. I'm going to paste that and I'm going to switch, instead of min, max. That's all. Hit edit, no mistakes. And now the result will be exactly the same because my numbers in the locator have been set. Okay, but I can test it by selecting this thing and then telling myself instead of 1 it will be 0.1 and 0.2, and the expression will automatically adjust. There you go, perfect. No, I don't want 0.2, I want let's say 0.9. Let's see how this is working, and for example 0.5. Very quickly you can see that you don't have to go back and modify all this stuff. Okay, beautiful, it works. Okay, I'm gonna put my numbers back to 1 and 2 because that seems to be working nicely. Next thing we're going to do is deal with emotion. Okay, we dealt with life, and now we're going to deal with the actual, right now is a very straight up. You know, I want to have some sort of deformation on their movement. Okay, and the best field for this, and I'm going to show you a technique that I like to use, I use it all the time, is layering what is a turbulence field. Okay, so let's make one first to try. So my particles selected, okay, remember, effects, sorry, fields in turbulence field. The first question you ask yourself in this case is this field going to be universal? Do I want it to be everywhere in my scene file? in my world here? The answer for this is yes. In this case, that means that you have to take the attenuation and take that out. So value of 0. Okay, so I don't want this thing to weaken as you get further away from it. I want it to be everywhere. By default, okay, if you leave it as it is, it gives you saw it last week with the rain, okay? It gives you a static pattern. So I'm going to repeat a few things from last week. You should do it all the time, I think, with this kind of movement. Is animate the face X and Z at least, okay, of your field in order to give some motion, okay, so some actually animation to the noise pattern that is on this. We did that last week. The easiest way is to go in here on the attribute editor for the field, so I can right click and get to my expressions faster. And I'm going to copy, paste that, and say something like time, for example, which is a value that changes, multiply by 35 point blah blah blah, done. And I want to do the same thing for the x-axis. I want it to move in those two directions, okay? In y, I'm not that interested. So you can try, of course, and see what it looks like. Okay, so that's fine, but I don't want to have the same exact pattern. So remember, we're going to offset this by adding just something, changing a little bit the amplitude, and we're fine here. Now you can see we have the animation on both. Let's go ahead and try, see what we get. Okay, so my pattern is changing. It's still very hard to read it, okay? It's still not doing what the video is doing. I'll show you how to do that. So what I like to do is actually layer two different turbulence fields. One of them I'm going to name turbulence low, and that one is going to have a very low frequency value. You will see the difference very clearly. So you can see what it looks like. Frequency, of course, is the amount of noise that this field is going to pass on. I'm going to use a value like 0.01 instead of 1. And I'm going to increase my magnitude just so you can see the effect easier, on your screen. So okay, I'm going to move back. Okay, you can see the effect. Okay, this thing is almost like rotate. It's not really rotated. Okay, it's just deforming so much, and it almost looks like a straight line sometimes. Okay, because I put my animation. Okay, it's moving, but you can see that all of them are going. And if you look at it from like the top view or something, you can see kind of what is happening here. Okay. The reason I do this layering of two, and the reason I put a turbulence field with such a low frequency, is because this field will allow me to control the overall deformation of the bubble trail. Okay, in this case, I use it for many things, even for the rain. We didn't put that on the rain last week because I ran out of time, but you should try something like this. This gives me an overall direction of the waves, of the bubbles. I'm sorry. And then I'm going to layer on top of this one a high frequency turbulence field that it will go in and modify each bubble on its own. So, okay, so low frequency means that all of them are going to follow this path, but if I put a high frequency on top of that, then I can then, as they move through this path, I'm going to be able to jitter them and give them some noise. So I'm going to keep this one like this, okay, even though it's a bit extreme, of course. It's just, like I said, I'm just making this very strong so you can see the effect. Probably, let's lower it. No, let's leave it. Turbulence low, I'm going to add another one. Okay, so select my particles again, fields, another turbulence field, which is also universal. So the attenuation is 0. I also need to animate it anyway. That's a step that you have to do every single time. My advice to you, if you're going to animate them both, at some point, if you have to make a change, you're going to have to make a change, most likely to both of them at the same time, as far as the animation you're putting on the face. So my opinion is that you should go back to the first one, okay? Go to edit that expression and put all your expressions for both fields in the same place. What do I mean by that? I can just copy this. But first of all, I'm going to rename my field so everything is consistent. So this is going to be my high field, okay? Let me make sure that I put that lowercase I. Okay, perfect. And then I'm going to go back to my turbulence low. I'm going to go to my expressions. And I'm going to copy this and just paste it underneath. And I'm going to replace the word low for the word high in both. So very quickly, I could keep that. I have the expressions for all 4 attributes, okay? I'm just going to offset this because, I don't like to have that. So let's do that and then do here like this, for example. And then, I don't know, I just really like to randomize this thing sometimes. Let's do that. Perfect. You can see that nothing changed, but now I can go into my turbulence high. I got expressions, but the cool thing is that all four of them are in the same place if I need to edit them. So I can go in and edit both fields. Otherwise, I have to go to the other one, do the same thing. I don't know. I'm saving myself a few clicks by doing this. This field will have my turbulence high is going to have the frequency at 1, okay, and I'm going to try the magnitude. You can actually turn, for example, for now, turn this one off, the low. We already saw it on his own. Let's see now the high on his own. Okay, so the high on his own is moving and he's doing this kind of pattern, which is nice. Now, if you combine them both, so let's go in and take the low and add, for example, a value of something not so extreme like the other one, okay, a value of 5, then you start getting undulations, okay, that you can control easily. Let's say that you want to make them, the undulations a bit stronger, they're a bit strong, but you can say you want to make them even stronger. You can go to 10. Okay, you can see how it deforms, but at the same time you have control over how noisy each one it is just by adding this. Put in, for example, let me just pause my, okay, so my turbulence high, instead of being 5, let's say we want to put it to 25. You get to keep the main undulations, but you also get noise. Okay, obviously I'm like I said, I'm pushing these values a lot. So let's do something a bit more, numbers a bit more realistic. So 5 for the high, and the low is going to have a magnitude of, for example, 3. And I think my frequency of 0.01 is a bit too low. I'm going to, because you can see that it was giving me like a big curve at the bottom. I want to have something a little bit like that. So frequency of 0.05, that should be fine. Perfect. Okay, this is a more natural, it has more movement. Okay, you can have a lot more control. If you want no undulations, you get rid of the low. If you want them to be very noisy, you get rid of, if you want them to have not so much noise as they climb up, you go and take out the high. Okay, this is my opinion, the correct way to get the most out of turbulence fields. Okay, let's control these guys quickly on the locator. You could control the frequency as well. I'm not going to do it just because to save time. Okay, but you could control not only the magnitude but also the frequency. So I'm going to say turbulence low, 0, no maximum, default value, let's say, I think we said 3. Okay, and then we'll do turbulence high, minimum of 0, no maximum, and a default value, I think it was 5. The connection is extremely easy. We're going to do it super fast. Connection editor, load this guy over there. So turbulence low to the magnitude. Takes longer just to find the attribute than to do the whole effect. Okay. The good thing is the next one should be already there, so I can just reload the right side, turbulence high, magnitude. You can do the same for frequency if you wanted to. I think it's a good idea to do it. At least of the lower level. Perfect. So we get our look. The only thing I think missing here, well, there's a couple of things, but the only, as far as fields goes, is a sense of an environment. Okay, so what we call a drag field in this case. Okay, a sense of air resistance. In this case, is water resistance, so it's even more. Okay, so that right now it feels like, or right now these particles are being simulated under these conditions in a vacuum. Okay, there's not really any atmosphere or any substance in the air. And being that these guys are underwater, it should be even more noticeable, something like this. So there's a field for that, and if you grab your particles and then go to fields and create what is called a drag field, okay? This is one of those fields that has to be in every scene pretty much, I think. It just adds resistance from the environment onto these particles. You can simulate being underwater by just increasing the strength of that resistance, right? So in this case, it's a universal field as well, so no attenuation. I'm going to leave it with the default value. Okay, my default, if it's not enough obviously increase it, but this is a very sensitive thing. So let's try 0.5. You know, already I can see the difference. You will see it clearly on your screen, but it starts to feel like there's some sort of medium pushing this guy. Bump it up to 1. Okay, they start to feel like, you know, it's harder for them to move. Okay, so that's probably a good way to deal with this. So that's the drag field. We're gonna leave it as drag, you know, you can just name it drag. And one thing before I connect it to the locator is also that my particles, okay, that's another one of those pre-flight check things that you should do on your particles is the conserve value, okay? For the conserved momentum of this particle is set to 1, meaning that, I think I said it before, but if there's no forces, okay, or collisions affecting these particles, they could eventually just move for infinity, okay, unless you kill them or something. There's nothing really to stop them. These particles wouldn't lose energy on their own. And the drag field will do that, but at the same time, the drag field is a force, okay? I want the particle to be able on his own to lose energy a little. And it's a value that unless you're working on a movie that happens in space, then there's something you have to change every single time. So I like to use 0.98. Again, it's a very sensitive value, okay? So this will be more than enough. And it will help with the sense of these particles not being able to slow down a little. It's subtle, okay, but it starts to work. Connecting the drag field, yeah, I have time, so let's go in and one more. Okay, so it's really imprinted in your mind. Name these guys drag, 0, sorry, no maximum, 1, done, and connections, that should be, no, left side, drag field on the right side. Okay, I think I saw magnitude somewhere here. There you go, magnitude. So now I can just go in, drag, magnitude, done. Perfect. So now we have a locator. Let's see what we get. We get radius, buoyancy, life minute max, turbulence low and high. We get a drag value. Perfect. Now I think we're okay with these attributes to start modifying, getting something interesting. You can make them live. Now that we added some drag and all, we can make them live a little longer to get a bit of a longer trail. Okay, so let's let them climb a little bit more. They're starting to look pretty cool. Now let's go ahead and think about rendering, okay? That's something, you know, necessary. So, for rendering this, I'm gonna open the PDF. Hopefully I didn't close it. There you go. Here is not that easy to see. I'm also gonna open, I think probably the actual footage. Even though it's a little bit small, I can make it full screen, but it's gonna look like crap. Let's see. But I think I can stop in a frame somewhere. But I think this is a good representation. You can kind of see, okay, imagine these are made with particles, okay, you know, you can kind of see that, you know, they seem to be kind of getting clumped up together. Okay, looking here, you have like a bit of a line, here's a bigger shape, but it does seem, if you actually, you know, obviously we've just seen bubbles before, when bubbles kind of come to touch one another, they blend into a bigger bubble, right? So there is actually a particle type that we can use for that. You can see it here very clearly, of course. Okay, you can see this kind of look. Okay, and we can replicate this relatively quickly by just grabbing our particles. Okay, and then let's change the particle type. You guys have used points. You have used streaks last week. You have used some of you have used clouds. Okay, on the first week setup. In this case, we're going to change it from points. We're going to go to what is called a blobby surface. And the blobby surface, I'll show you what it does, but you can see that it has an SW next to it, meaning that it can be rendered with Maya software, which is great. So click on that, and they automatically change into a bit of a, you know, discs. Okay, they're not really spheres; they're just discs. If you hit render with this, let's go ahead and try. With Maya software, it's going to be fine. Okay, it's no need for Maya hardware in this case. Hit Maya software, and bam, you get what it looks like spheres. Although they're not really spheres on my screen. And the blobby particle, what it does is on render time, it creates an approximation. So it takes this spherical shape by default, okay? But if you modify some attributes, okay, let's go into our particles and remember, okay, I can't stress this enough, but when you change the particle render type, you must come into the render attributes tab of your particles and hit the current render type. This will release, okay, or unlock attributes that you're going to need for this. You can see that it has a value for radius that if I were to use, for example, value of 0.1, you can see that it changes on my screen, and of course, they're smaller. Yeah, nothing fancy there. I'm going to leave it at 1 because the next one is very, very important. This is what makes the blobby useful, the next attribute, okay, what is called the threshold. Again, at render, you get spheres, and I'm going to save it just to show you. The threshold is the ability of these particles to find themselves and start blending with one another. You probably heard the term metal balls, okay, on different applications. Similar, although they only exist on render time. That's the one condition. So the higher the threshold, the closer these particles are going to need to be together in order to blend. So the more fluidy look you will get. The more, well, I wouldn't say water because it's not really water, but the more, let's say, water-like this thing will tend to look. So the higher the number means you're going to have more particles together near each other in order to get a result. Okay, if you have 2 or 3 particles with a threshold of 0, you will see them as spheres, but if you have them with a threshold of 1, for example, you wouldn't see anything. So let's go ahead and try. This is with a threshold of 0. Let's go ahead and try threshold of 1, okay? And let's see what we get. Automatically, you see it's very quick. It takes pretty much the same amount of time because it's a post-process done on render time. There's no meshing involved. Okay, this thing, is going to be only visible on render time. But you can see, obviously, it's a massive difference between this and this. Okay, that works really well. And I know it works really well because we can try putting a shader on this. Okay, bubbles, you're basically rendering just the highlights. Okay, you wouldn't be rendering, a bubble is just air, right? So you're only going to get the highlights, the surface catches. If you go online, and if you don't want to, okay, like me, if you're a bit lazy like me, you can go, let's see what I have here. We can use this one. You can just Google Maya Bubble Shader, for example, and you will get a bunch of free ones that you can download from the web. So you go in there, and you can find a material, a shader that will make your geometry look like this. And that can be easily applied to particles. So I already went in and registered and downloaded this. Okay, it's Creative Crash. So you can get it from there. And I'm going to load it into my scene just to take a look. So instead of using the gray Lambert, I'm going to use something a bit more, applicable. I'm going to load my shader. So file import. Those of you who are a bit lost in this part, Igor takes care of this on his course, Intro to Maya for Effects, and I think we're in the same week as this one, week 4. So by all means, watch it. I get my bubbles. No, that's not the one. Let's find the shaders folder. And here's my bubble shader that I downloaded from that website, the one you saw. And it comes in here, right there. And I'm going to assign my shader just by selecting the particles like you do with geometry. Right-clicking on it, assign to selection. Okay. Done. Let's go ahead and re-render this. I'm going to save this image, try it again, and you start getting something different. If you see the alpha channel, it's still solid because we're not passing any transparency from these particles yet. Okay, so you could add opacity like you did before. Okay, it's no big deal here, but or you can just go to the shader. So let's find our shader now. So here it is, bubble shader. Okay, you can get the transparency is connected. It looks like something. So let's see what we're connected to this ramp. So let's see what this ramp is connected to. Just want to see what this is driving. It's a shader that you get from the web, right? So you probably have to figure it out. Let's see what we get here. So transparency is plugged to this ramp. Eccentricity, roll up. Okay, you can control some of these things in here. This is connected to something else. So there seems to be a multiply, divide, no, the reverse. Okay, so basically, well, you can go in and modify, or if you feel like it, okay, if you're adventurous, you can make your own bubble shader, which is not that big of a deal. It's just playing a little bit with its values and stuff. So, but for now, okay, let's say that we have, you can see that you can get a look. This is more of a soapy bubble, okay. You can modify the values easily, okay, just by changing the shader here. The only thing I don't know, because I didn't do this, is you see, this is what makes it look bubbly, like soap bubble. Okay, you can modify these colors, and you'll be fine. Okay, I'm gonna leave it as well. I just want to prove the point that, you know, just by assigning a material to these particles, you're gonna get a different, more proper look. Okay, we're not doing soap bubbles in this assignment. We're doing just underwater bubbles. So you're gonna have to change, if you're gonna go for this one, change the colors a little. And then, you know, it's a matter of modifying. You know, right now all the particles, okay, have the same size. So I think now we can go back to this background, which is nicer. They all have the same size, and that's something that I don't like to do. And probably you will want to have these particles not only be born with a different radius, each one of them, but you also might want to modify the radius as they get older. Okay, the usual thinking will be to have these particles start, bigger and then shrink as they get older, for example. That could be fine. Let's go ahead and try that. So for these particles, you know that if you go into your shape node, you can control the radius. We already saw that, right? But that's a radius for all of them at the same time. Okay, this will help. This will give us, let's come a bit closer in here. Maybe this will illustrate better the threshold value. Let's see. Okay, I don't know if you can see it easier here, but this is working. And this will render with Mentoray as well, which we'll do at the very end. But right now, the radius, I don't like that. All of them have the same size. So that's not really good. Let's go in and modify that. So grab the particles. We're going to go in here. And you want to have a radius that is controlled on a per particle basis. That tells you the name of the attribute you need. It's radius with a double P at the end. And if you look on your list, it's not there. And it's fine, that's normal. You need to add it yourself. So you're going to be adding a general particle attribute. It's not going to be your own. For in this case, we're going to do that later. It's going to be a particle attribute. Okay. You're going to look for the list, which is alphabetically ordered. And you get radius per particle if you look down the list. Hit add, okay, hit OK, and it shows up on my list. Okay, this is the way it works to keep things light on the scene. Okay, you add in the attributes you need. Now you get radius per particle, and you want to control that using an expression probably. And again, anticipating you want to control that with your locator as well. So I'm going to go in right away just to save time, and I'm going to add myself a couple of attributes. Actually, I'm going to add myself 3 attributes in this case. I'm going to add one that is called radius min. I'm lazy, so I'm going to copy that, and it's going to be a float. Radius minimum could be 0, no maximum, and a default, let's say, of 0.5. Okay. And I'm going to add myself another one called radius maximum. Minimum of 0, maximum no need, and a default of 1. And I'm going to add one called radius mult. Okay, I'm going to use that one soon. Again, 0, no problem there. I'm going to leave this at, for example, 0.1. 0.1. I'll show you now why. Hit OK, you know what we get. We get 3 attributes over here. The first 2 are very easy. We can go to our particles. We did it with the life, min, and max, and it's exactly the same. So we're going to go in, and I want to assign that radius when their particles are born, and don't change it. So we're going to go in here on creation. Okay, that's the way we're going to do it. Same way we did the life, which is right here. And we're going to say, copy the radius. Okay, you can paste it in there, and it's going to be at random. Okay, and then because I'm lazy, I'm just going to copy this, paste it there, and if you keep consistency on your names, you will remember what it was called. So it will be radius min. Okay, and the other one, we're going to just do that. Copy. You can see that it's very quick if you work like this. Radius max. Okay, so radius BP is going to be a random number between those 2 values that come in from the locator. We've done that one before. Easy. Edit, done. Hit rewind. Now it's going to happen on creation, so it won't change right here, right? You have to rewind and play it again. And you can see that these particles, it's a bit, they're a bit big, but if you kind of pay attention in here, for example, they're a bit more separated. Each one of them has a different size. And hell, we did the rig, so why don't we just go in there and then say, okay, this is too much. Give me a value of 0.2, 0.5. Rewind and play. So that's why we do these setups, right? To adapt them like this. So very quickly, you get something different. And now we can zoom in and render this one. Okay, you can see, well, hopefully it's a bit dark. For the sake of this example, okay, you're gonna go and play in with your shaders and you're gonna have a lot of fun with that. I'm just gonna put my alignment back. Just because it's easy for me to show you this way. So there you go, easy. Look how much better this looks, okay? How much natural, just by changing the radius already, this works. See this, remember, with the bubble shader and proper lighting, and then you will end up with this kind of stuff, easily, okay? Not so soapy, of course. You don't want a soapy bubble in this particular example. I'm just trying to figure out how to put this thing. But you do want that ability to blend these particles together. Beautiful. The last thing I'm going to do before the class is over, quickly, is to use the radius multiplier thing. It depends, okay? I'm just basically want to have the ability, if I need to control how these particles are going to evolve. The radius at the moment stays the same, and because it's a blobby particle, it works really well. Okay, this particle can go in from one group to another, blend with the other, it's fine. But sometimes you might need to change the radius and shrink them as they go to the top. Or the inverse, if it's some kind of different effect, okay? So basically what I want to do is I want to modify the radius of this particle in every single frame. As the particle gets older, I want to change the way the radius is being manipulated. So what I will do in this case, I'm going to show you one technique today, and we're going to do probably another variation of this one later in a different example. Okay, today is a bit easier. All I need to do, the question is, okay, I want to modify this now as the particle gets older. It means that every single frame I'm going to have to change this number somehow. So it's not creation anymore. It's going to be runtime. Either you put it before or after dynamics, doesn't really matter. That means before or after the fields and collisions and gets applied to it, all dynamic conditions. Doesn't matter. I'm going to use it before just because I'm used to it. And what I need to do in this case, okay, is copy my attribute, of course, paste it in there, is I want to tell this bubbles to either shrink or grow depending on that radius multiplier attribute that I'm putting myself in the locator. So basically what I want to say is, well, you're going to get smaller and smaller every frame, for example. How do you say this? Well, you got to say the bubble shape radius pp is going to be equal to the same, for example, plus, if I want to make them bigger, the attribute that I used on my locator. You can just hard code it for testing first to 0.1. This is fine. Okay, I'm going to show you another way to type this. So right now, okay, every single frame, these particles are going to take 0.1 and they're going to add it to the previous radius they had, so they're going to get bigger. So it's going to be huge. But you can see that the circles get bigger and bigger. Okay, perfect. If it's too hard for the eye, you can just go a bit smaller. You can see now the need of controlling this with the locator from outside. It's much easier. Now they're going to get bigger, but at a lot slower rate. If you let them play long enough and you analyze the situation, this will be natural, this will be good. So basically, that's what I want to do. Every single frame, I want to add a little bit. But again, we're going to control this with the locator. We really don't want to do this. This is not good. We know how to do this one. It's easy. You can just name it, what's the name of the locator? It's Bubble Master Control. Okay, that, and the name of the attribute was radius mult, if I'm not mistaken. Plus radius mult, hit edit, done. So radius mult in this case is a value of 0.01, so it's going to give me the same result. Maybe if I make them, let's see. Okay, so here it will be easier, of course, to see. They're getting bigger. Okay, you can see the size down here. You can see the size up there. It is working. And the good thing is, if you want to shrink them, then you can just say negative. I think I put myself a minimum value, 0.01. Let me try. I think I put myself a bottom limit here. Yeah, so that's good. Let's fix that. Let's say you do what I did, that mistake. You can go to modify, edit attribute. Okay, you're going to find your attribute for radius multiplier, which I specify has a minimum. I really don't want that because I want to shrink them. I want to remove that limitation. That way I can go back in here and then just say negative 0.01. It will take that number. And now these particles are just going to shrink as they get older. And it's good that this is happening, okay? You can see that they actually turn black. And they stay alive, and it's weird, okay? Nothing to worry. You're not really changing the color of this particle. What is happening in here, these particles, the ones that are black, have negative radiuses. So it's almost like you went too small and then you went back to the other, like inside out particles. And the normal is pointing inside. This is perfectly normal, okay? This is due because you're shrinking these particles too fast and they're living too long. So you have to balance this out. Yes, you can say if the radius of the particle is less than 0, kill the particle. That's a possibility on the expressions, okay? But if you want to stick to something consistent, basically you will have to go in and either lower the life, okay, of these particles, or lower the amount of, okay, something. Well, Maya has a limit on the precision, so let's say something like that, okay, 0.001. They will shrink a bit slower, okay, but they will still shrink. You have to be careful because the particle, this is good, this is working perfect. If the particle lives a bit longer than this, you start getting black particles, so you will have to account for it. If I were to do it myself, I don't have time right now to do it, but if I were to do it, I could put it in the expression, saying that if the radius of the particle is less than 0, then kill it, so you don't have those black particles coming up. But you can see that this is working really nicely. Now you can go in there, render this, okay, and it works really well. So assignment for the week, just get to this point, okay, get something cool, put the bubble shader in there, light it nicely, and if you want to add more attributes so these particles can do other things, by all means, go for it. So let's see what we have. No questions, but I'm going to ask anyway. All this work in Mentoray because I have an underwater scene which I want to try bubbles. Yeah, it does. Let me, the speed of light, I will do, swap this to Mentoray, go to the settings, make myself a little, for example, IBL, plug that image onto that so it looks awesome. I don't know if I like this one. I don't know what this one is, but hell, we'll use, let me see what else I have here. HDR. Let's use this one. And this is fine. It doesn't have the shader yet, but let's see. Okay, so Mentoray lights them. Let me just grab this thing, render stats, done. So Mentoray will do, okay, we'll do the lighting. Okay, you can see here. And if you were to put that shader back in there, I don't know what we're gonna get, but let's see. Assign it there, because this one has reflection, so it's a blend shader. So yeah, there you go. I mean, it's obviously blown up and all, but it does work. And you do have a scene, also another scene with underwater, because it's the assignment. I want to see this on the assignment, okay? The idea is going to happen with the assignments. We're gonna, once you get your bubble rig working perfectly nice and you love it, then we're going to deal with the bullets later, next week probably. Where we're going to disconnect it from the shape that I'm using for emission. We're going to connect it to bullets, and not only bullets that hit the water and they go underwater. So we're going to be emitting these bubbles. They have dynamics all set and ready, emitting from particles. So that's coming soon. Shobana, do you have any questions as well? I think the connecting to the lifespan has been cleared for you. Do you have any others? Or you too, Rafe? I don't know what happened to the other guys today. I think that the daylight savings got them. Everything clear. Okay, perfect. So if everything is good, then I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you guys watching this. See you next week.